Welcome to Robert Bellissimo at the Movies. This is a YouTube video podcast where we explore storytelling on film, as well as interviews with industry professionals who work in film, television, theater, among other areas of the arts. It is my honor to welcome film critic Jonathan Rosenbaum, who was the film critic for the Chicago Reader from 1987 to 2008. He was born in Alabama in 1943. The son and grandson of movie exhibitors, he grew up in a house designed by Frank Lloyd Wright. While living in Paris from 1969 to 1974, he worked as an extra for Robert Bresson and as a script consultant for Jacques Tati before working as assistant editor for Monthly Film Bulletin and staff writer for Sight and Sound in London from 1974 to 1977. He is taught at State University of New York at Stony Brook, New York University, the School of Visual Arts in New York, the University of California branches at Berkeley, San Diego, and Santa Barbara, the University of Chicago, the University of St. Andrews in Scotland, the School of the Art Institute of Chicago, Kino Club Split in Croatia, and Film Factory in Sarajevo. He has many film books, which include Moving Places, A Life at the Movies, Movie Wars, How Hollywood and the Media Limit What Films We Can See, Essential Cinema on the Necessity of Film Canons, and a book we're discussing today, Cinematic Encounters, Interviews, and Dialogues. And the follow-up to that is Cinematic Encounters 2, Portraits and Polemics. Jonathan, welcome. Thanks so much for joining me.
Well, thank you for having me.
I loved this book. It was so fantastic, and my watch list is now another 1,000 movies, I think. There's so much to discover, and I'm eating up more and more of your writing, so it was really, really good. I'm looking forward to the follow-up. I wanted to start by asking about the first chapter we have here on Orson Welles. So, because I love this story of you met Orson, you had a 1-hour lunch date with him. I know you admire him a lot. So what did it feel like as you're on your way to meet him? I mean, is that a nerve-wracking experience, or how do you psych yourself?
Well, it was a little nerve-wracking, particularly because I had just stayed up all night finishing a draft of my article about his first film script on Heart of Darkness. So I'd gone to sleep at 7 and then been woken at 9 to ask if I would care to have lunch with Mr. Welles, So I deliberately didn't take along a cassette recorder because I was afraid I'd spill something, or, it was like, I basically just thought I'd take notes or write down whatever I remembered later, but I didn't tape our conversation at all. But yeah, I was very, it was exciting, but also, yeah, I mean, it was kind of surprising in the sense that he turned up, I think, like 10 minutes late and apologized for being late. And it was a very cordial, lunch companion. I mean, and I think was sincerely trying to help me, remembering as best as he could and referring me to someone else, Richard Wilson, who would, could help me with some of my research.
Mm-hmm. I believe you had mentioned something about it, after you met him, you had a different image of him in your mind, or a different impression. Is it a letdown to meet your idol sometimes?
No, he was
not that it was a letdown, but
I used to think if there was anybody in the world I most wanted to be, before I met him, it was Orson Welles. But then after I met him, I thought, he's been so frustrated and so many of his projects have been screwed up.
Right.
And since we talked about those a lot, I realized that I no longer wanted to be him. It was like I still admired him just as much.
Mm-hmm.
It's just that some of my fantasies about what it was like to be him immediately dissolved. And I think a lot of people still have a lot of very contradictory attitudes towards him, because he's seen as the person who had it all and then somehow threw it away, which I think is not quite accurate.
Right.
But it's partly accurate. It's like, I think I think what continues to keep him interesting for me, among other things, apart from his unusual talent is just the fact that he doesn't fit in any of the sort of like industry rules that we kind of like take in with the air we breathe. I mean, it's sort of like he breaks all the rules.
Mm,
And this continues to be true. I mean, the fact that, for example, Criterion refuses to release The Other Side of the Wind, even though they have exclusive rights to it, I mean, so it won't be coming out on DVD. That's sort of like not a new situation, but a continuation of the way in which, when his work comes out, it's considered indigestible to most of the
mm.
public until a few years go by and then they finally catch up with it.
I'm surprised they wouldn't want to release it because I actually
Yeah,
thought that was a really good move. I thought it turned out really, really well.
well, I mean, I have some mixed feelings about it as a consultant because I think that it's an anti-Hollywood film that was edited basically mainly by Hollywood professionals.
Right.
So there's a kind of contradictory element. But I'm guessing that the reason why they're not doing it is because it's so politically incorrect.
Oh, I
Whether it's
see.
because of Oya Kodar playing a Native American or being nude for much of the film. I don't know.
Right.
They didn't give me a reason, but they did tell me they're definitely not going to do it,
Oh,
which I
that's a
think is a
shame.
real pity because it's sort of like, you know, most people can accept now what's politically incorrect about his earlier films, but that's because they've had a few years to get used to them. I
Right.
mean, in other words, now they can accept and bring out, even on Criterion, you know, Touch of Evil or Lady from Shanghai or whatever. It's like things that are, you could say were politically incorrect, but people got used to them.
Hmm.
People haven't gotten used to this film yet, so it's still kind of like considered, I don't know, distasteful, dangerous. There are problems with it. I mean, in the sense that it's I don't know, there are almost no sympathetic characters in it, which is
Right.
something I think is makes it different from his other works,
Right.
among many other things.
Hmm. Well, maybe down the road we'll get a Criterion release. Thank you so much, everyone, for watching. I want to thank all of my members on Patreon. If you're interested in becoming a member of my Patreon, head over to the link patreon.com/Robert Bellissimo at the movies for full details. Patreon is exclusive content that I create month in and month out. And as a subscriber, you are able to vote on polls and contribute to what I do on Patreon month in and month out. So head over to the link for full details. You can also leave a donation directly to my YouTube channel by pressing the thanks link, which you will find directly below the video frame. Just click on the thanks link and you can leave a donation there if you choose to. And lastly, if this is your first time here, please consider subscribing. It is absolutely free to do so. By pressing the Robert Bellissimo at the movies logo, you will see it floating above my head in the top left corner. To your top left in just a second, just click on that and then click the bell in order to get a notification every time I release one of my new episodes. Also, click the like button and leave a comment below. Let me know what you think of this episode. Also, you can also share the episode. All of these things are what produce traction to my YouTube channel. So I appreciate you watching and thank you again. And I will see you in the next episode.